Very good. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I figure we should get started. I'm Julian Brooks. I'm Senior Curator of Drawings here at the Getty Museum. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging our presence on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Gabrielino Tongva, Tataviam, and Chumash peoples. I pay respect to the ancestors, elders, and relatives of these groups, past, present, and emerging. And I'd like to acknowledge also the sponsors of our exhibition and this event, Rob Lovelace and Alicia Miñana, who are here in the audience with us. Rob confided that he drives past Hitting the Wall, Women in the Marathon, Judy's downtown mural, every day to go to work. So very close to his heart, which is wonderful. So thank you. And then a few bits of administration. You are all welcome to a reception. I mean, all those in the auditorium are welcome to a reception after this event outside on the terrace at approximately 5 p.m. But don't party too hard, because the last tram down from the top of the hill to the bottom of the hill is at 6 p.m. So, just pace yourselves, please. And then for those attending via Zoom, closed captioning has been enabled. To access closed live captioning, click the CC icon on your Zoom menu bar at the bottom of the screen. And then finally, there will be time for some questions afterwards. If you're joining via Zoom, then you can use the Q&A function actually at any time during the conversation. And in-person attendees, please wait for a microphone. Raise your hand and wait for a microphone to come, and that way everyone can hear. So, and then, Judy really barely needs introduction, but of course, I have to introduce our guest, Judy Baca. One of America's leading visual artists, Dr. Judith F. Baca, has created public art for 4 decades. Powerful in size and subject matter, Baca's murals bring art to where people live and work. In 1974, Baca founded Los Angeles' first mural program, which has produced over 400 murals, employed thousands of local participants, and evolved into an arts organization, the Social and Public Art Resource Center, SPARC. She continues to serve as SPARC's artistic director, while also employing digital technology in its digital mural lab to promote social justice and participatory public arts projects. So welcome, Judy. Thank you so much for coming here this afternoon.
Thank you, Julian. And hello to everybody.
And Judy, it's been a very busy week for you. I know that you're recovering from a bout of COVID not so long ago, and it's been, it's just the world that it is right now.
Yes.
But yeah, welcome. And it has been a busy week. What's been happening this week, Judy?
Well, I had to make my way back from Canada, where an exhibition of the Canadians called Chicanx, which was an amazing show of 35 Chicano artists from all over the Southwest. And unfortunately, in the middle of it, a number of us got sick. So I stayed in Canada for recovery, and all except the fact that I sound like myself, maybe at 100. I don't have my voice back, but I came back and for the summit here in Los Angeles and had the amazing experience of meeting the President of the United States and also giving a gift of the salsera. And as I whispered to my colleagues, I said, typically I'm on the outside protesting these kinds of events. And today I've been invited in. And so my image was an image of a domestic worker in MacArthur Park. And all of you know MacArthur Park is one of our most dangerous parks in Los Angeles. And she is filled with monarchs. And it was a gift, a 15-inch by 15-inch glass piece. And the original large-scale piece has been commissioned by the Getty and is here on exhibit. So don't miss her at full scale in the exhibition entranceway. So I got to meet Joe Biden, who took his hand out and said, "Dr. Baca, what kind of doctor are you?" I said, "Fine arts doctor." And he said, "Hi, Doc." and then Jill said, "I'm a big fan," because they actually love the Salsetta image. And our hope is that it will begin to transform our immigration policies here in the United States.
And what's wonderful is that, as Judy mentioned, all the attendees at the Summit of the Americas got a 15 by 15 inch version of the Salsera mural printed on glass, which, as Judy said, is, the original is here at the Getty and will be up for at least a year. And I'll have some photographs of that later. But it's such an amazing thing that all the attendees get these.
It was super impressive. I mean, it was a really Latino event, and I was most impressed by the Secret Service, who looked like people from Star Wars. They didn't look like humans.
Well, and frankly, what a great party favor, like a mini mural by Judy, isn't that great? So yeah, and Judy, I'd love to, over the course of the next 45 minutes or so, I'd love to talk about some of the projects you've worked on, particularly, obviously, the Great Wall, and then take a bit of a deep dive into the Hitting the Wall, Women in the Marathon mural downtown, for which we have a lot of your preparatory drawings here at the Getty as well on exhibition. And I hope that you've had a chance to see some of those already, but otherwise the exhibition will be up till September the 4th. So yeah, if we can start with the Great Wall, which is obviously just this iconic project. And can you tell us how it all began, Judy? I mean, it was a while ago now, but...
Well, this is actually a vision of it with about 750 feet short of the totality of the half-a-mile mural. And it's a narrative work that I used to call the alternative history of America. And in fact, it has been declared a National Historic Site. And so therefore, I can say it is the history of America. And it looks at basically parts of the story that hasn't been told, the untold stories. And it's a narrative work that was painted by over 400 young people with me, who now, many of them have their children the age they were when they started. And it's in the process of being extended over about 100 historians and various informants, and 80 artists work with me in the production over a number of years. We are beginning, this is actually one of our encampments here in the production. We're in the process of extending it a full additional half mile, which will come back the other side of the channel. It'll be a circular piece, and it will come to the contemporary period. Our production ended in the 50s. We had a flash flood that took away all of our equipment and materials, and this bridge is in the process of being constructed. It actually doesn't show the laser cuts that are the rails, but this bridge will be a viewing section 90 feet across the river. So it will be coming by truck, which is not to be missed at some point. A 90-foot extension will be coming down the freeway and then be dropped over the site. And it's going to make the Lakma rock look like a pebble. It's an amazing thing. I can't imagine that they're going to be able to do this, but we've been in the process of trying to build a bridge for multiple years, and we're very close to seeing the pour and the production of the bridge at the site. So it is a monument that will be considered a national monument of 8 acres and of a mile-long mural that is a narrative work on the history, particularly of Los Angeles, but the whole of the U.S.
And so, Judy, this bridge, this is an artist's rendition of what the bridge will look like, and I certainly can't wait for the moment when it's dropped.
Me too.
Dropped there. And the idea, I think, if I understand it rightly, is that, the mural currently runs for half a mile up to where the bridge will be, and then it will essentially wrap around and go for another half mile
Yes.
back to the sort of origin.
Right.
And it'll go so you're currently working on the 70s now, or the later 60s?
I'm actually, we've hit the 1960s, which is, of course, really, I have to say it's the first era that we're working on, that I'm working on, that in which I was a totally conscious person, right? I was an adult and involved in civil rights. And so it's actually, we're working on designs that I have memory of those stories. And we have been interviewing all kinds of amazing people who have contributed enormously to our thinking about what should be in the mural. And we're bringing back the alumni who are supporting the next generation of painters that will be on the production. So the next 2 years is intense design, and then there will be the actual production of the painted work that will be extended. And for the very first time, we'll be painting outside of the channel, and then actually on substrates, be it attaching the substrates to the channel walls. I mean, this is what it will be like, our studio. This is a dream studio. It doesn't exist.
Again, an artist's rendition,
It's right. What we do is we dream these things up, and then we say, okay, make it be, right? And this is what we're working on, the idea that we will be able to work interiorly with air conditioning in a bathroom, maybe that would be nice, that we could, have food and not deal with the incredibly difficult site. The Great Wall site is perhaps the most difficult place ever to paint, except the freeway, which is the other terrible place.
But it is amazing. The idea of working in a water drainage channel like that, and just you're potentially a victim of flash floods and everything, and somebody did get washed away, right? But they were rescued. Yes,
and she's on the Friends of the Great Wall Committee, and she'll be working with us for the next segments. And Beatrice Plesner, who was a young person who was on the crew, actually went 6.5 miles down the channel in a flash flood and survived. First person ever survived with a helicopter rescue, and an amazing moment, which is interesting because recently I talked with her about it, and she said it caused her to reevaluate why she was on the earth and what she should do with her time, and she's back with us. So I'm pleased that she's still here and pleased that she's going to continue with us.
It's an amazing thing. And can I ask, over obviously now you will be using digital techniques, and you'll be working in the dream space that we know is going to happen because we have the slide to prove that it will happen.
Yeah, right.
And you'll be working in that beautiful space with a restroom, with these things, and
air conditioning.
And air conditioning. But in the past, you obviously just had to work as you were going along, and in, say, something, a slide like this, like here you're having a meeting about the actual installation of these things, or cartoons, or what's happening here, for instance?
Well, this is a morning meeting, and the crews are being set out to go and take different segments. And behind me, you can see the drawing on the wall in blue line, and it's being shaded so that you know where the darker areas are, the middle tones, and the lights are. And the young people who are ages of 14 through 21 are being trained in how to do this application. And many of them are from the juvenile justice system, and they're all from the economically disadvantaged programs. In other words, they had to be from a poverty program so they could be hired. And that meant that they were probably of color, and they were from the inner city, and they were from everywhere. And they became the team that put this mural on the wall, which is kind of remarkable in the sense that they were able to do it. And that the techniques that we developed actually have become models for other people to work in collaboration and community input and participation. So in other words, how do you take naive hands and groups of people who have no experience, put them in relationship to each other because they're prone to fight with each other, and make them a team that can create a narrative work in a relatively short period of time on a giant wall? in this blistering heat.
And how did you do it, Judy? Like, how does it?
I haven't got a clue. I keep looking at it saying, did we really do that? You know, when we're in the channel and I look down and see the work go to a pinpoint from one end to the other, I think one thing, only a maniac would have done this.
But it clearly worked out incredibly well.
Yeah.
And how, going forward, how will you decide what what to represent, basically, and how far will you go? Are you going to look into the future, or you've got 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000, 2010 to cover?
Yes, I'm hoping to get to Trump. I think what we're looking at, there's a method in which we do research and we create a narrative that is a timeline. And on that timeline, we put all the incidents and events that should be included. And we vet it through different prisms of age, of immigration status, of race, of gender. And as we do that, we see where we've represented and not represented. And then we actually correct. And we invite other people to come in to correct us. And we get wonderful artists to look at pieces. Like, for example, I'm just thinking of Judy Chicago coming when we were working in the 50s and her looking at the section on suburbia and saying, that's a pink ghetto. And because women were being brought back from the workforce into what she called the pink ghetto. So promptly we changed all the houses into pink. And we were able to get input from a feminist thinker. And so a lot of the development of the concepts are vetted through people helping us think with it on the content. And so we've had some wonderful people already in. A long interview with Paul Schrade, who was shot with Robert Kennedy, and the insights of that moment in the Ambassador Hotel. Insights with Tom Hayden, just before he passed, and being part of the Chicago 10 and that experience and him talking about that. So we recorded them, and so now we have this archive of amazing people who have talked about those periods, and then we can select out from that metaphoric discussions, or somebody will say something amazing, and then that will end up an image. Like, I'm thinking of this last interview I had with one of the members of the Fighting 442nd, who was a Japanese soldier who was recruited from an internment camp. And they won the most medals of anybody during World War II. He said, Judy, we were the very fabric of America. And therefore, after thinking about that with my team, we turned the Japanese 442nd into stripes of the American flag. So, like, the metaphors then can actually help us develop the content.
Well, it's amazing that it's such a, that deciding the episodes to represent is as collaborative as the actual
right.
execution of making the mural as well.
Right.
Incredible.
And it's also really, it's humbling because you really recognize that this isn't a story you can create on your own. It's really the story, all of our stories. And so it's a collaborative experience. It's something made in connectedness, connected to the people we're making it for, connected to the people who are producing it, connected to the neighborhoods that it lives in, and connected to our country.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's such an achievement. And you got the grant from the Mellon Foundation, which is what enables you to complete it, essentially.
Right.
And is there a time frame for that? I mean...
Yes. That's really
is
scary.
Is there a viable time frame for that?
The time frame is really scary. We're talking about 2,740 feet in the next 2 years. So think of 1 inch to 1 foot. 2,740 inches of mural, of design. And that is, a small scale. And then to coloration. And so we have about 2.5 years to put the designs together. And it will, I'm sure that we can make a good stab at it. I'm not sure whether we'll make it, but we'll give it a try. And so right now I'm I'm for illustrators and artists out there in the environment on the web. Send us your resumes. We're looking for help to develop these designs.
I mean, that certainly sounds ambitious, but I would never bet against you, that's for sure. I think that sounds amazing. I'd love to, if you don't mind now, have a look at the Hitting the Wall Women in the Marathon mural that you did back in 1984. It was one of the Olympic murals commissioned when the Olympics came to LA in 1984.
Yep.
And can you talk us through it a little bit, please, if you can, in terms of the subject matter? You have this runner who's hitting the wall.
Right. So as I look at it, I recognize, looking at the Great Wall, that we were just completing the last segments of the Great Wall when I immediately had to come over to make the deadlines for the Olympics. And it was June in 1984 that we were to be prepared for the visitors from the Olympics coming. And Bob Campbell, who was leading the effort for the arts that would be put into Los Angeles at the time, he was the president of CalArts at the time, was very adamant about putting the pieces on the freeway. And every time I said to him, I see him, I would say, "No, Bob, it's no man's land. We should not be putting the murals on the freeway." But he was very convinced that because it was the car traffic corridor, it was Los Angeles, the car culture, that we should put the 10 murals that were going to be done on the freeways. So I didn't really know how to approach this, because I thought, what can you put on the freeway that people can see in a flash, right? And that they will see something different every time they come by, because they'll never be able to stand in front of it and contemplate it. So I began to think about the wall being the wall, right? And I learned that when people are running a marathon, there's a point in which people, they hit the wall, which means that you've run all of your energy out and all of your carbohydrates and resources in your body, and then you run entirely on pure will. And that is I think 24th mile or something like that. And you've probably seen, particularly in the 1984 Olympics, the women finishing the run and just barely staggering across the finish line. And so I wasn't so interested in painting sports murals, I just thought that would be not that interesting. But as I began to look at this notion of marathons, I realized that I was a marathon painter. And that the marathon run, in a sense, was a similar act of total passion and commitment and will. And that I began to interview people about it. And so I used what you're looking at as a wall that's modeled after the great Mexican muralist Jorge González Camarena, who painted these beautiful stones. And they represent basically the old order. In order to make stones like this, you basically need a slave force to do it. They hand carve them, they hew them, and then they fit them. And so I made the wall of that kind of stone. And then I thought, okay, how do you get through this wall of the resistance of women running the marathon? 1984, hard to imagine, was the very first time that women could run in the Olympic marathon. So before that time, if a woman tried to run, they were tackled. They were not allowed to run because it was a man's race. And so 84 was the opening of the very first time of that race. And I thought, this is a worthy story. And I think I can do something with that. And that's how I began the thinking. So there's the Towers of Babylon in it. You'll see the stones falling out. But importantly, to the right is a heart. And that heart is coming from a thought about courage. And I just saw this sort of quick definition that courage was about working more at heart, right? Coming from a heartfelt place. And I thought, there are young girls today that will be able to train a lifetime. and that they will then begin to exceed male time in the marathon. In other words, when we begin to make it accessible for girls, then they will begin to be the great athletes that they can be. Because women, in a sense, are made for the marathon. They're birth givers, they're life keepers, they're family builders. And so these young girls are going through the heart, and they're coming out behind the woman. And the rest of those lines they're tracked on the Punto de Oro system, which we'll talk about, but they're also the tracking of the light as it moves across in June of 1984 for the Olympics. The light's coming through the overpass.
And I love the way how the mural, is clearly integrated with the surroundings. So the overpass actually continues within the mural, and and it really is sort of making the most of the wall.
I put the overpass on my wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Judy, I remember coming to talk to you about this project back in 2019.
Yes.
Along with
we've been communicating a long time.
It's been a while, exactly. And along with our fabulous graduate intern at the time, Sarah Fryer, who's somewhere in the audience, I think, or certainly watching up there. So, kudos to you, Sarah, as well, for all your work on this show. And we looked at some drawings, we talked about this, and then in the middle of lockdown, I got this note from Pilar, your fantastic registrar at Spark, and said, "Oh, Judy's just found some more drawings for hitting the wall." And this drawing and the one that follows, Judy had just found in her garage, as one does. and I love this. This really shows you thinking about how people are literally driving past this mural, and what is it exactly gonna figure, right?
Yes.
And then the second drawing shows the runner coming through the heart, as you originally intended, I guess, to combine the two aspects.
There's so many trials before something becomes real, and I'm sort of shocked at how many drawings I do and how they're all over the place, because I might be sitting in a faculty meeting drawing women coming through the heart, right? Well, people are talking about organizing classes and renaming them and so forth. I'm somewhere else.
I mean, they're such wonderful drawings.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I love this one. It has like a telephone number at the top. It reminds me of like Leonardo da Vinci's sort of, brainstorm drawings where, everything goes into it,
Yeah.
And then this was an early, as you had said, you'd pushed very hard to try and have it be somewhere not actually on the freeway, so people could actually walk up to it and see it. And so this was a project at 7th and Big Sur,
Yes.
which in the end they rejected and said, no, it's got to be right on the freeway.
Right. No, they said no. They said no to this.
And then this is a sheet that we put in the exhibition that, I don't know how well you can see it, but it's a drawing on graph paper, and it has all these points on the side. And I sort of, the first time I saw this drawing, I was like, what the heck is that? And I sort of want people in the exhibition to think that as well. Like, so Judy, what the heck is that?
Right.
And here's a detail of some of the puntos as well.
Well, and this is actually, it's the Punto de Oro system. It's or also known as the golden section. But I was trained in the use of it in David Alfaro Siqueiros' workshop in Cuernavaca. Right shortly after his death, a group of us, a contingency of us, went to learn from the maestro's workshop about how to paint murals. And so a number of us came from the Southwest. There were 26 men, essentially, and me. I was the only woman in the workshop. And what I began to understand was that Siqueiros actually used the golden section, but he used it in a different way. He used it for dynamic divisions. He was not interested in the sort of balanced symmetry of Jesus on the cross with the two Marys at the side. He was much more interested in a projection of an image out of a wall. They would come and grab you by the solar plexus and drag you in. And so my thought was that to create dynamism, that I needed to create a musical division of space that would, when an arm flew out or head twisted, it would go to a point predetermined that was, in fact, affirming the concept. And actually, that's a really good image to look at, because all of those red lines coming through Rosie the Riveter on the Great Wall from my exhibition recently at the Museum of Latin American Art. The derivation of where those lines are going is indicated there. This will end in suburbia, or this will end at a different point. So in other words, whether you consciously see it or not, the division of an arm or a movement of directional line will take you to a place that is affirming the concept. In other words, that is amplifying the idea. So in the runner, all of the points are created. Even the lines within the stone are affirming the larger view of the breaking down, for example, of the old order. And the rope, this is not a finish line, it's a rope that is holding her back. And you can see these pieces that are breaking. Even the palm trees are falling in the sort of power of this character. And it was taken from a poem by Judy Baca about talking about cypress trees in Monterey, and you know how the cypress move. They're twisted toward the ocean because of the wind, right? The wind changed the shape. And Judy Baca named it in a poem years ago that said, these are examples of a powerful woman who has passed. And so I thought, okay, a powerful woman is passing through this wall. And so that's why the palm trees fall.
I didn't know that. And you know, it's amazing to me how the lines, the structures of everything is rooted in this sort of golden section. You know, it's sort of back to Piero della Francesca and Renaissance art history in some ways, the golden mean. And I notice on a lot of the drawings it says 5-3, and so you're literally measuring out, right?
Everything is mathematical.
I mean, you know, we see all the, you know, the precision with which it's done,
right,
too. You know, where you're measuring it all out and making these lines really mean something and constructing the whole thing.
It's ratios, you know, and I'm not a good number person. I'm sort of a numeric. I mean, I can't, you know, add my checkbook. I can't figure out my checkbook. But I understand the meaning and need for ratios. I understand the need for the division of space in this way. And what's fascinating is that I understood also that my puntos fell exactly on the way that light fell on the piece. So
this is your final coloration that where you pull it all together and you have the fall of light, you have all the lines, you have the coloring, obviously, that you're going to put into the mural. And I love this photo of you working on it. Like, it's just, you know, I think, I don't know, I study drawings, and I just love pictures of artists at work, you know, and
a lot younger Judy Baca making that piece, right?
No. And one of the wonderful things, I think, that, you know, the exhibition that we have upstairs with Judy Baca hitting the wall with all these drawings is related to an exhibition that we have as well called The Lost Murals of Renaissance Rome, and about how in Renaissance Rome all these murals were made, which are now basically gone. And we have drawings that relate to them. And I noticed that in the Hitting the Wall mural, you have this figure on the right of this young runner who is looking and is inspired by this, you know, victorious runner. And what's rather wonderful is you have actually the same device, you know, 450 years ago, the same device. This is a drawing dated of 1595, and it shows Taddeo Zuccaro, this artist who got his first big commission as a muralist. And you see him up there on the side of the building on the scaffolding. But earlier drawings in this series showed Taddeo going around Rome as a delivery boy. And he is inspired by looking at all the murals in Renaissance Rome. And he then becomes a famous artist doing a mural. And sure enough, then the artist puts a delivery boy who is also being inspired. And it's this wonderful counterpoint in the two projects.
I love these drawings. They're beautiful.
Yeah, they're really, I mean, they're so compelling, so compelling. And so this is, Judy at work on the wall in 1984, and I can just only imagine how it was working there. You're talking earlier about how your lungs are muralist's lungs from working on the freeways, working, literally being there all the time. And
I think I have holy cards in my hard hat. Because people seem to point their car at you, as they come around the van. They'd be looking at you, and then you would see them turn the car toward you. And I don't know if it's just sort of an automatic response, but lots of near misses. And we had that barricade, and just above the scaffolding, you see a bunch of candles, which were holy candles, all lit up to keep us safe. So we evoked every spirit we could, to keep ourselves alive here.
I mean, it just looks so precarious, and
not a pleasant place to be. First of all, the sound was just, we had to use gestures to speak to each other. We couldn't hear each other. And then on this, where I am at the top, I'm above the overpass, and the fumes went up to the top. And so I would paint until my legs felt like lead, and then I would come down, and then I would breathe oxygen from an oxygen tank, and then my legs would lighten, and I'd go back up. And it's not a good thing to do.
I think we're convinced of that. So, after all this, you made this incredible mural. And then...
Yes.
2019, April. I mean, I know that there have been, in the past, there have been parts of it have been whitewashed, but suddenly,
I give you Caltrans.
Caltrans.
Yes, and this is, we have a really big problem in Los Angeles. And the problem is that the graffiti abatement, or the hating of the graffiti, or the tagging that goes on, is profound. And the destruction of the mural, rather than just remove the graffiti, painting it out is cheaper and faster. And they have a kind of rule that they want to get the graffiti off in 24 hours. But actually taking the graffiti off a mural requires more time and concentration. And without acknowledgement, the fact that we had been maintaining this. And at a certain point, the Olympic Commission organizing committee commissioned the 10 artists to do the pieces. But they didn't create a maintenance program. And at a certain point, they decided that the murals on the freeways were the responsibility of the individual artists to maintain. Imagine how crazy that is, right? And luckily, I had my nonprofit organization that was doing mural rescues, so I could fight that battle. And when they painted this out, I sued them.
And then they painted it out again, right? Just for good measure.
I sued them, and then they painted it out again.
Unbelievable.
They had more graffiti. They got mad again. They painted it over. But the lawsuit, actually, they did a settlement which provided us the money to restore it. So today, you'll see the figure back on the street. And my intention is to keep her there and to keep fighting the battle. So there's two battles. There's the misogyny of the young guys with the spray cans, who are just want to get things up. And if you hit a mural, it stays longer than if you hit a blank wall, right? Because murals aren't maintained. And the misogyny of the State Department, who doesn't recognize art as a serious thing to preserve. So I hope that my lawsuit helped them think of that, because it cost them a lot of money, right? And it also provided us the funds that brought her back.
So it is now, looking better than ever. And it's actually, this feels like a commercial break showing a sort of photo like this, but in a way it is. Like,
yes, that's our mural shield, which we invented.
This is a product that Spark has developed, and with Judy, but to basically coat murals. And in a way, the hitting the wall, whitewashing, just showed how well it worked, because I remember talking to you after that, and you said that hitting the wall was coated with this coating, and you'd said that you expected to retrieve maybe, I can't remember, 80% or 60% of the mural, but in the end, they basically could power wash it off with hot water, I think, basically, and that's it, right?
Right. It was. We used a little citrus cleaner, and we were
And
able
then
to. Yeah, we were able to take off the full coating, but our coating system was really effective at never letting the graffiti or the overpainting reach the paint itself. And so the in-painting, that meaning going back in and painting the original colors, which is the laborious thing, was minor. It was not a major piece of work. So.
But it was it was remarkable. In November 21, I went down to see this work in progress, and one of the things that is astonishing to me, and which I think in the exhibition we have a giant blow up full size of this mural, and I think it does capture the glazes that you were using, because yes. It wasn't like a standard mural technique. You were using glazes, which typically you would use on a piece this big, not like a 100-foot wide mural.
I created a real problem for myself because I so admired Camarena's work. And in the Palacio de Bellas Artes in Mexico City, he painted these stones, and they were marble, and they had this exquisite color. And so I kept thinking, how can I get that color? And so I used glazes, which is not exactly recommended for a mural because it takes too long. But so I systematized it. And so each of my team members each took different colors, and we created this method of modulating the turquoises, and we're able to get a quality of glaze, and that we were able to bring back in the restoration.
I mean, it's amazing. It looks absolutely luminescent, I must say. This is a photo of the graphic that we have in the exhibition, which is full scale, and where unless you happen to be interested in hanging out on the 110 freeway north at the 4th Street exit, it's probably your best chance of getting really well acquainted with the mural.
I was saying, you hit it, Julian, because when somebody took a photograph, the woman's head was right to the knee, and I said, that's right, because I had to reach for the kneecap with a brush, right?
Yeah, our fabulous designers did a great job.
Yeah.
And now, you're working in different techniques, yes. Which is exciting. And huge kudos to you for just pushing the boundaries, really, of what can be done with a mural. Mm-hmm. And so I show here just a slide of a mural that was unveiled just a couple of months ago at UCLA, which is using this technique of working with glass, basically, and right. Glass for it, essentially printing on glass.
Right. And this is actually kind of interesting piece because it's two things. I was commissioned during the pandemic, it was commissioned before the pandemic, and then the pandemic hit, and we couldn't meet. So my regular method of working with a team in a group to create the concept and the designs all had to be done on Zoom. So this piece was designed on Zoom, and it was printed. And the other thing is we've been working very hard at trying to do preservation techniques and long-term lasting of a mural. How can you keep these murals over a period of time? And acrylic on concrete and acrylic in outdoor environments is really fugitive. It's going to disappear. But this mural is done on layers of glass with a frit. It's basically baked into the glass, and it isn't ink. It's actually minerals. So, in other words, it's permanent. So that the UCLA piece is the first permanent digital mural done completely on Zoom, painted on screen, and then installed.
Yeah, amazing.
It's kind of amazing, yes. And it foretells a future of a new kind of work that can be done.
And really durable. Essentially, it's like sort of stained glass because the glass, it's melded. Mm-hmm. And this is the mural that Judy did at the Getty, which is up in the galleries of La Salsera. And this is printed on both sides of the glass, so you have a sort of dimensional aspect as well.
It's 2D kind of. I haven't seen it yet. I'm dying to see it.
And these are just a few photos of working on it in the digital mural lab. And these are the Monarch butterflies, which were used to fill the figure. Photographs of the butterflies fill the figure.
Julian was worried we were killing butterflies.
Well, Judy said in some emails, she said, and we'll use real butterflies in the figure. And I'm like, what? Monica practically, they're endangered. And anyway, luckily, just photographs, like real photographs.
We didn't kill any butterflies.
No butterfly. But again, digitally created and then printed, essentially.
She is actually multiple layers so that there's a shadow casted by the butterflies on another layer, and the light reflects. So like the UCLA piece, it reflects back the light, so it looks almost like it's lit from behind. Yeah.
And it's been wonderful seeing it in different lights as well, seeing how it sort of changes with the light. Yeah. And one of the fun things for me as somebody who works here has been to, I go up regularly and to see people, visitors, posing in front of it, doing the pose of La Salsera and taking selfies and photos and which I haven't tried yet myself. Maybe in the future.
They're dancing through the gallery. Right?
But Judy, like going forward, I mean, preservation is such a big thing. We talked about it briefly. Like you are responsible for, maintaining hitting the wall on the side of the freeway. And basically, pretty much all, I think, of the other freeway murals are gone. And it seems like there's just a problem. There needs to be some sort of decision somehow. So, we're all watching the LA mayoral race. Like, if, the winner of that race turns around to you, Judy, and says, Judy, we have a problem with with preserving murals in this city. What can we do? What would your answer be? I mean, what can, in an ideal world, what could be done, should be done?
I tell every one of the politicians who will listen that essentially we need to change the policy. The policy that says you'll remove graffiti from a blank wall, but you won't remove it from a mural needs to change because you basically privilege the murals as sites for vandalism. In other words, you've moved it to the murals. And the other is that many, like the murals on the freeway, they could be recovered. So that a kind of a will about the preservation of public art and the preservation of works that are out in the environment that are important works by major artists within our city can be recovered. And that doing that basically sends a message that they're valuable. It sends a message to young people that these are important. Because for the first years of our mural work in Los Angeles, the over almost 50 years that I've been doing this, nobody vandalized our murals. And the reason was they had an opportunity to paint one. They had an opportunity to be hired to work on the murals. We need to recover that. Take our young people and direct them, give them opportunities, let them work with artists, let them labor in the sun to make a piece like this and know what it takes. And I think we'll do a whole lot better at the maintenance of our incredible assets and public legacy of Los Angeles murals. Yeah,
well, I'm into that, fingers crossed.
Yes.
Let's hope they're listening.
Yes, I'm anybody who will listen to me, I will tell.
No, well, thank you so much, Judy, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Judy has kindly agreed to take questions. I think I have some questions here from the web. And if you have questions here in the auditorium, please wait for a microphone, and somebody will bring a microphone to you, and you can ask it here. We have one in the room right here now.
Hi, Judy.
Hello.
Betty, I don't know if you can see me. Betty from Self Help.
I can't quite.
Hi.
Betty. Self Help Graphics present.
Yeah. We're Arturo Yurista is here too. So Self Help and the community is very present. Thank you so much for today. I have a question about the Caltrans lawsuit. I don't know if you're able to share, but I'm curious if if that litigation actually changed policy at the state level for them moving forward.
In terms of the lawsuit?
Right, like did that prompt them to create a new policy so that they're not just whitewashing? Because there is a state legislation that requires anybody to give an artist notification of that. So is there an internal policy that's changed as a result?
Actually, it's in a sense it's gotten more repressive, because now they're saying they won't allow paintings to go on state highway systems because of the lawsuit. In other words, they fear that they will lose money doing it. But there are legislators that, particularly the Speaker of the House, Rendon, has been very positive in terms of looking at how they could reimagine the maintenance of public art in public spaces. So that's what we need. We're not there yet. And I think in the North, they've had much more repressive unwillingness to commission new works that are on state highway systems. So sometimes it moves forward, and sometimes it's like, okay, no more art, right? But I think it's a will that we have to bring to the public, that the public has to express itself, and that the arts, we need to hold hands in the arts, so that it's major institutions like the Getty, for example, and also our organizations that produce these works are in concert. We're working together to say these works in communities are extremely valuable, and they should be given the same kind of credence and importance as major works on canvas.
We have a couple of questions from the web that I'll do first, and then we'll come to you in the room. And these, I hope, are fairly straightforward, and it's my fault for not being clear about this. But where is the Great Wall mural located? Where is the bridge? Which freeway? Thank you. So, which freeway? The 110 North at the 4th Street exit in downtown LA. And the Great Wall.
The Great Wall is in the San Fernando Valley, in a segment of the city called Valley Glen, between Oxnard and Burbank Boulevards along Coldwater Canyon.
And I think if you just search for Great Wall of Los Angeles, it'll come up, and it's straight there.
It's in the LA flood-controlled district, or what used to be the Los Angeles River.
And then there was a question, where at UCLA can we view the mural? And that's on Ackerman Union, right?
It's in Ackerman Union.
Yeah.
It's open to the public.
Yeah.
My question was also about the UCLA mural. And I apologize, I have a bit of a hearing problem. But the centerpiece, the Indigenous woman, or I don't know if she's Indigenous, but would you tell us a little bit about her? And I don't know if, I'm a student of the Indigenous people of Los Angeles, and there's a woman who the statue is going up downtown of Toipurina is one pronunciation of her name. But I was wondering if she had any involvement or influence in that piece.
The image is, I call the center image Toipurina, but I made it up.
Yeah.
Okay, she is actually an anonymous Gabrielino Nation woman. She was affiliated with the Gabrielino Church, Gabrielino Mission. There was a woman who led a revolt in 1781 against the mission, San Gabriel. She was a 24-year-old woman, and she went as far as Utah to bring braves in to fight them. And she was banished from that region and buried, I think, in San Fernando. I mean, we've done research on her further. But when I saw the image that was an anonymous person, obviously taken when the camera was invented, so it couldn't have been Toipurina. I said, this is Toipurina. This is the image of what she would have looked like. And the night of the opening, if you go online and you look, you'll see an amazing thing happen, which is a young woman comes forward from the Tongbas. She's a Tongva, because that's what Toipurina was, a Tongva. And she was the spitting image of her ancestor. And she gave this beautiful speech about the representation of Native Americans at UCLA. And I said, all activists who come forward that are in this mural have the mic for as long as they want. That was my way of making the space for them. And she did a beautiful speech and looked so much like her. Everybody said, oh my God, it was her. Was it her? I said, no, She was a descendant.
It's a weird coincidence too, because I wrote a novel that my final goal is to have it published. But the same thing, I wrote a story I invented about a woman who fought for her people, who were, many of them, enslaved at the mission. And then I was lucky enough to be a reader at the Huntington, and I found all these papers about that there was actually a woman who did that. So it's just very coincidental. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, there's a great researcher named Antonia Castaneda. She's from Trinity University in San Antonio, Texas, and she is the most knowledgeable scholar on Toypurina and found the records in Sevilla about her being taken before the Inquisition. Yeah.
And then we have another question from the web. With La Salsera being the first direct-to-glass digital mural, and your augmented reality project in partnership with Snapchat and LACMA, it seems your work has been very experimental lately. Do you have any other firsts coming up? Or other digital types of projects?
There's a first, I think, right now, which is that the Snapchat is a really interesting element. You can go on to Snapchat, and we have created a lens through LACMA. LACMA has supported this development, where you can hold up your cell phone, and it will be, when the bridge is up, you'll be able to do it from the bridge. And it basically turns the river back in, the concrete channel back into the river. And across the river, my drawing of this coyote, he's a red coyote, and he's speaking to the river because the Tongva myth says that the coyote raced the river. And so there are glyphs coming from the water, and he's speaking to it. And then there are various plants and animals that are coming back. So Snapchat is a new experimentation to basically create a visual dream of Los Angeles River being recovered. The healing of the river and the healing of the people is the very basis of the Great Wall.
I think we have maybe one more question from the room. Yeah.
So, how did you paint the mural?
How do I paint it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, so first you make a little drawing, a little one, right? And then that little drawing is the basis of making the sketches for the big wall. And you measure the wall, and then you measure the little drawing, and you say 1 inch equals 12 inches. So whatever is 1 inch on the drawing becomes 12 inches on the wall. And that's how you do the transfer. And so when you go into the exhibition, you can see the drawings that are doing that. And it shows you how it's done. You can do it. Or the other thing you can do is you can take a projector with your drawing and make it big by projecting it on the wall. Tell your father you want to paint your bedroom.
Brilliant idea. Yeah. So I think, and just find a last question from the web, but I think we know the answer to this really is, in retrospect, do you think painting murals on the freeways is a good idea?
No.
Okay, good.
I'd say it's not a great way to risk your life. But I have to say that one of the things that occurred in this is that there was an amazing camaraderie between us all trying to do this crazy thing. And I think actually when the Olympics opened and all 10 of those murals were up, it was quite extraordinary. And so I did respect Bob's idea. It's just that I don't think it was such a great thing to do to my lungs.
Yeah, quite. Well, thank you again so much, Judy. Thank you.
Thank you.